How's it going, YouTube? My name is Sherbert, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about 7 mistakes to avoid as a newer player. Super People has just hit early access, and with it comes a large percentage of players who are still learning the game mechanics. So in order to help players progress and learn quickly, here are some tips on what to avoid as a new player. The first thing new players should avoid doing is filling up their inventory with too much of one item. In Super People, players are allowed to only have a certain amount of items in their backpack, so it's important for players to not go full loot goblin and grab everything they see. Storage management is vital for surviving the zones and other players, which is why it's important for players to only be carrying around the essentials. You'll need a healthy mix of healing, throwables, and ammo. It's not uncommon for newer players to fill up their backpacks with items they may not need, such as ammo to different guns or 50 compression bandages. In a perfect world, your inventory will have multiple healing items, multiple grenades, and no more than 200 rounds of ammunition. Anything more and you're essentially just carrying it for the next guy who kills you. Now this doesn't include crafting items. Crafting items are held in a separate inventory space and don't take up room in your backpack, so feel free to grab as much crafting items as you want. Now this leads us to our next mistake newer players make, and that's not crafting enough. In Super People, crafting is one of the easiest and fastest ways to get top tier loot. You can essentially turn any weapon or armor into level 5 heroic simply by finding the crafting materials and hitting your little hammer against your tiny anvil. Too often new players hold off on crafting something in hopes that they'll find something better right around the corner or at the next compound. In Super People, nothing is certain, so it's important for players to stack the cards in their favor by crafting better items now to ensure they live long enough to make it out alive. It's much more beneficial for newer players to craft better items to keep them alive longer, even if they know they'll be dropping that item soon. Those crafting materials that you've been holding onto won't do you any good if a player with better weapons or armor kills you before you can craft the item you've been looking for. Crafting materials are incredibly common and can easily be found, so don't worry about wasting materials on an item that you'll eventually be dropping. What's more important is that you stay alive long enough to craft those items. The third thing we're going to be talking about is the most important topic of the video, and that is that newer players should avoid choosing placement over experience. What I mean by this is that far too often new players care more about what place they come in as versus getting into fights and learning from their experience. The players who sit in a room all game or corner camp the stairs to a building are severely hurting themselves in the long run by not getting the first-hand experience of how to win firefights. This may come from a lack of confidence to take fights, or they may be under the notion that placement equals skill. Failure is the best teacher. It's much more important for new players to jump into fights, die, and learn from the mistakes versus hiding the entire match waiting for the circle to close in. Super People has just recently been released, so many new players are learning right along with you for the very first time. This is hands down the best time for new players to take on fights because a large number of the player base is learning the game mechanics as well. Through time and repeatedly getting into fights, you'll find your skills start to improve. You'll start getting better at finding players, weapon recoil, being comfortable under pressure, and learning when to be aggressive and when to play defensive much faster than the player who avoids fights just to be in the top placement. The fourth mistake newer players make is not using their ults. Each class has an ultimate ability that can turn the tides of battle in their favor. These are absolutely vital for winning fights and subsequently winning the game. Most class ultimates have a super short cooldown and can be used at almost every fight. You can't use your ultimate if you're dead and back in the lobby, so it's essential to use your ultimate as often as you can. Just like tip number 3, it's important for you to become familiar with every class's ultimate through experience, and after enough time played, you'll begin to understand when the best time to ult is and how to use your ult most effectively. So burn them if you got them. You don't want to spend the whole game looting for somebody else, so use your ult as often as you can to ensure a longer match. The fifth mistake newer players should avoid can apply for both beginner and advanced players, but that is to avoid looting and reviving while standing still. In Super People, you can tab loot, which means that your character can freely move left and right while looting through a player's body bag. This makes it harder for an opponent to line up a headshot on you while you got your head in somebody else's loot bag. Not many players know this, but you can also jiggle back and forth while reviving a knocked or dead player. This again is to get your head off center axis and make you a harder target to hit. You never know who's got you in your crosshairs, so it's important not to end up knocked like your teammate. Simply use your directional keys and make an unpredictable pattern as you bring your teammate back to life. Also, side note, to the dead players that are being brought back to life, make sure you're paying for these revives. The last thing you want your teammate to do is carry you and then also float the check. The sixth mistake newer players make is not using their throwables and consumables. This is something that can easily be overlooked, especially for a newer player. Super People is incredibly fast-paced, and it's easy for a player to forget that they have these in their inventory. Super capsules should be eaten as soon as you're someplace safe. They won't do you any good in your inventory, so take those bad boys down and level up. The same could be said for energy bars. These bars provide a power, defense, or speed boost, and are something that players should be eating regularly. They provide a huge buff to the player and can help keep you alive and keep you in the fight longer. Generally, you'll want to eat a power bar right before you get into a fight, a defense bar right after a fight, and a speed bar when you're rotating or trying to gain or close distance on an opponent. Throwables fall under the same category. Throwing anything and everything at the enemy is a far better idea than holding onto them and having them just sit in your inventory not doing anything. Smoke grenades are an incredibly important tool and should be picked up often. Grenades and flashbangs are also great for initiating a fight or to bombard an opponent hiding behind cover. Both grenades and energy bars are tools to help you win more fights and should be utilized at every engagement. Seventh and final mistake new players should avoid doing is fighting out of cover. The game offers a wide variety of things to hide behind, and too often I see players try to 50-50 fights out in the open. In Super People, there is no such thing as a 50-50 fight. Players can have a level advantage, specialized weapon bonus, power bar damage bonus, home ground buff, skill damage bonus, or a higher tier weapon or armor that can make the fight feel more like an 80-20 engagement instead of an even fight. What may look like an even fight to you could be a walk in the park to your opponent. You never want to leave firefights to chance, so it's important that players have an object to hide behind. You'll want to find a good object for cover that you can peek from multiple angles. Many classes in the game give you a buff for firing while leaning. So by leaning and re-peeking from different angles, you're not only making it difficult for your opponent to guess which side you'll be firing from, you'll also be gaining a damage bonus simply by leaning and firing. Firing behind cover also gives you the option of repositioning behind cover without letting the enemy know where you'll be popping out next. The last thing you want to do is to be caught in the middle of the field with no cover as you're getting popped from a bad guy who's hiding behind a rock using the terrain to his advantage. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you guys found it useful. Let me know in the comment section down below if there's any other videos you guys want me to make. Also, I do stream right here on YouTube, so you guys can come in, check me out live, ask me any questions. I'd be more than happy to help you. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day and stay super.